On Founders Day, September the 27th, 1963, the 56th anniversary of the founding of Olivet Nazarene College. This is R.L. Lunsford and Mr. Norman Moore, who are interviewing Miss Mary Nesbitt, Olivet's first teacher, about some of the old days at Olivet Nazarene College. Miss Nesbitt, let's begin by talking about you first. Tell us where you were born and a little bit about your own immediate family, will you?
I was born in Union County, Illinois. (1877).
What date?
April 27th.
How many brothers and sisters have you?
I had 2 brothers and 6 sisters.
And were you the oldest, the middle, or the youngest?
No, I was the 4th child. My brother was the oldest, and he was the one that was quite interested in starting a school, a Bible school of some kind. And he was just being led as the Lord led him. And he went to different places to find a place, and he finally settled in Olivet, Illinois. It wasn't even named Olivet at that time. But they got out in the yard and had a big prayer meeting, and I forgotten now the preacher's name, but he said Olivet's the name.
Now, when you say they, do you mean there was a religious service going on, or was it the family?
A prayer meeting of the people that was interested in, had been talked to, and they was interested in this school that they were talking about.
Now, was this a preacher to whom you refer, possibly Dr. E.F. Walker?
No, listen, E.F. Walker was the one that had a meeting in Danville. And my brother heard him say that they ought to have a Bible school. And my brother seemed to fall on his heart to think about it and keep it on his mind. And he finally went as far as Colorado to see if he could find a place. And he come back to the little town, I might say, part of a farm. It was on the farm, and this was a part next to the highway, and they chose that for the place, and then they had to have a name, and this preacher, he was quite lively, and he was so happy about it, he said, Olivet's the name.
Now, Miss Mary, I believe that your brother, Orla Nesbitt, was never married, was he?
No.
What do you suppose gave him such a concern for children when he had no children of his own?
Well, he was the oldest in the family. He knew all the rest of them was on after him. There's 8 of us.
Now, we know of him as the founder, but did he have any part in the school after it was founded? Did he serve in an administrative office or anything of the sort?
I can't tell you just exactly now which one was president, but those boys, there was the 2 Richard boys and Mr. Kennedy and the preacher in the Friends Church, and then the students, Sunday school students from the Christian Church, and you see, it was a mixed up church society, as far as that's concerned, but they all were one. They all agreed with the work that was to be done.
Let me take another try at guessing. Was this preacher L. Milton Williams?
No. This preacher, well, we had an awful nice preacher over there. His name was Ellis, Preacher Ellis. I don't know his first name.
Ellis or Ellison?
No, Ellis.
Ellis.
Ellis. But this was a Friends preacher. I can't get his name out.
All right. Now, in the background of this school, evidently there was quite a strong holiness center right around there, wasn't it?
It was caused from the holiness preaching. Dr. Walker was preaching in Danville, and they had they would have every year a meeting with some preacher preaching holiness in Danville.
Now, do you know anything about the beginning of the holiness emphasis around Danville, just how it got started?
Well, no, I don't. I didn't get to go.
It was already on when you were quite young, was it?
Well, yes, it was going on quite a while. My brother was a Sunday school superintendent out in Fairview, and I was a teacher in the primary department. And so we had some good teachers. Our teacher was a fine teacher that taught our classes, you know. And then the older people was hanging to that. That must come from Ohio, because Ohio people were Christians that came out there. That is, my uncles and my father, and he had, I think he did 4 different brothers that come out.
So your people originated in Ohio?
Yes.
Now, I believe that you had taught, you told me, 3 years before you started teaching in the Holiness School in Georgetown.
Yes, I taught the little school up on the road north of Georgetown. It's gone now. And I was there 2 terms. And then I taught the home school up in the country, just about 2.5 miles. She had walked before many times. And then I taught out at Bethel. That's east of, west of Catlin. That's the 3 schools I taught. And my father was trying to get me a school then, but Mother wasn't very well, and I wasn't just anxious to get a school because I felt like Mother needed me so bad. Well, I didn't get one. But my brother come along, he said, "You're not busy now." He said, "Won't you take that work? Start out in the primary department." And you see, we had one teacher, and he taught all 8 grades in the country. And our teacher that we had the last year was a perfect teacher, because he taught his children what he ought to teach to all of them. But he took this class that was studying to try to take a teacher's examination. Well, 2 of us got certificates.
Now, you got your teacher's certificate after you finished your 8th grade, is
Yes,
that right?
Sir. After I finished my 8th grade, I never was in high school.
And then you started right into public school teaching.
I started right in the public school teaching. That's what they did that days. And so then I was asked to take the work in the Bible school, and I wasn't busy, and folks thought it was all right, and so we all worked together.
Now, can you tell us what your brother Orla had in mind when he started this school? Do you think he envisioned that someday there would be a holiness college?
Yes, he did. He thought it would be a great college, I guess. I forget now just what he had, but he had a card made, and he had the pictures of the things around that card, what they were supposed to take under this as they went along and grew up. You see, this school started from just a little bit, but it started to stay. That's what he started for.
And Mary, we have one of those cards in our library here. Did you know that?
I think so. I've got one too.
But in spite of the fact that he looked forward to there someday being a great college, he wanted to start with the very smallest children. Is this right?
Yes, that's what he did, and I think we need it today so badly.
Now,
I tell you, our little folks these days are not taught to let the words of your mouth and the meditation of your heart be acceptable in my sight, O Lord, my strength, my Redeemer.
Now, was this verse you quoted pretty much the controlling purpose of your school right then?
Well, yes, it was for the children, because these children these children had Christian parents, and they were taught and they were glad to hear somebody tell them too. And I think that we had a wonderful school for little children.
Now, can you tell us how the subject matter that you taught in the Little Holiness School differed from the subject matter that you taught in public school?
No, we had to teach the regular grades just the same. And then on top of that, why, we always had our Christian work first.
Now, was this in the early morning, or was this in connection with your other classes, or?
Well, it would go throughout the day if it was necessary.
All right. Now, can you think of one or two, possibly, of those little fellows that you taught in that first year? We're talking about the year 1907, 1908, aren't we? Do you remember some of the students that you had in that very first year?
Well, Raymond Kennedy was one, and well, I've got names down, but I just can't remember them just quickly. I might be able to tell you some along with it.
Did you ever have to spare the rod in order not to spoil the child?
Oh, yes, and not very strong. But they respected me. It seemed like that we had a blackboard that those little tots could stand up there, just little fellas, and write on that blackboard. They put it up there in the building, purpose that we could have our children write on the blackboard. When I put something on the blackboard, they'd always know what was there, because I'd tell them and then they'd remember it. But then that's the way they could get their little lessons, you know. They could copy it on the board from their books and different things. But we always had our classes recite just like the public schools out in the country.
I understand that you weren't very well equipped. That is, you didn't have school desks like they had in the public school, and you kind of had to make shift. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. They didn't have any place. When we started in the tabernacle, that was the Holiness School building, building for the meetings, you know. And they would slide down on their knees and sitting on the seats in the church, just like you would, you know. They slide down on their knees and write on their seats. That's until a little three-room house right next to us was given, I don't know how they got it. It was empty. And they went and got the long seats where there's two children sit together in the public schools. And that's the kind of seats we started out on.
I believe that old tabernacle is still standing in Georgetown, isn't it?
The Catholics have it now.
It is what is now the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when did you move out of Georgetown to what is now Olivet, Aunt Mary?
Oh, I think it was the second year.
I believe your brother and possibly Mr. Richards bought a farm and built...
Yes, they bought a farm down there. But
what kind of a schoolhouse did you have there?
Oh, we had a dormitory first, and then they taught in the end of the dormitory. It's a good-sized dormitory.
Well, you started
cooking and everything in that building.
You started taking in boarding students the second year, did you?
The next year.
Where did your students come from? Do you remember?
Oh, Indiana, and some from Illinois. First fellow was from Illinois.
Now, how did the people outside of Georgetown come to know about the school?
Well, they heard the talk. They heard what the children had to say, and they heard what... you see, I had several children from Georgetown in high school when I was in Georgetown. And then when I went down there, I couldn't take them with me down there. I just had the new children that come into the town, and then the people that lived there, and people that lived around there.
Now, I guess after the second year, then, there were some other people who got interested with it and helped your brother out. Is that right?
Well, they all worked until they had a fire. I never knew what the fire was. I saw it, but I never knew what caused the fire. But it almost ruined our administration building, and that was after it was built. So it's been several years after the school started. I don't know just exactly. I think it was 39. Was it, Margie? Or Nelma? Don't you
Yes, it
remember?
was in November, I believe, of 39. But now, in those beginning days, how did the idea, let's see, you started the first year with an elementary school. The second year you had an academy, which was a boarding school.
Well, that belonged to the others. I didn't have anything to do with that, you know.
Yes.
The teachers were some other people. I see that. I just had one teacher extra when I went down there, and that was Val Wilson, the first missionary to India.
Now, who first thought of the idea of calling it Illinois Holiness University?
Well, I don't know whether I can answer that just right or not.
Was this many people's idea, or was it one man's idea?
Oh, I think it was many people's idea.
That is, the idea that your brother had of someday developing a great holiness school was now taking hold with many people?
Yes, it was. There's lots of friends over in Vermilion Grove and different around. We had friends around there.
In fact, I believe there were 7 men, were there not, who applied for the charter?
Well, I couldn't tell you that either.
Now tell us something about the school when it did become Illinois Holiness University, can you?
Well, I just think it meant that the students began to multiply in different ones, but they had such a wonderful experience, the students that did come there, and other people were led into the experience, and it seemed like that it did improve. And we thought we had a pretty good school, and until the fire.
Did you have revivals on the campus then, as we do now?
Yes, there was one man made a big building, and every year we had revivals, and we'd have big preachers there. We had even public speaker once in a while. Really, what was that man that wanted to be a president so bad?
William Jennings Bryan.
William Jennings Bryan. He wanted to be He wanted to. He gave an awful nice talk. I was there, but it's been a long while since then.
Now, then, did people begin to move from other areas and make their home there in order to send their children?
Yes, they did. We've had different people come from Indiana and different places around Illinois, and of course that helped my part of it to build up, and the other part too. They had children for both ages.
Now, Aunt Mary, you've watched Olivet from the first day it started till today, haven't you?
Yes. When I had a chance.
Do you get any impressions of the school today that you could compare with the impressions that you had of the little school when it first started?
Well, I feel like that we ought to improve it all the time, and I think the school is improving over here, the college, and I am pleased with what I see and what I know that I was glad to see Ruthie come to school and take her 2 years here, and I know would be glad to. Well, we had some other Olivet boys. We had some of our Olivet boys. There's a little boy down here that I didn't meet when I was over here, 2 of them, but they were Olivet boys.
Do you feel like you sense the presence of God on the campus now as it was on the campus in the old days?
Well, I think I do. I feel like that the Lord is working now, and today is the day of salvation.
Now, Aunt Mary, you remember that 3 years ago today we dedicated a building to the honor of yourself and your brother, and today we dedicated our chapel. Would you mind sharing with us some of the things that have gone through your mind and heart as you've seen these buildings go up?
Well, I felt like the Lord was taking care of it. I felt like that He was still working, and I believe He is.
Now, Aunt Mary, this tape that we're making this afternoon is going to be listened to by many people for a long time to come, and I know that every one of them would just like to have you give your personal testimony. Would you like to do that?
Well, in the beginning, I went to the altar at Fairview when I was about 10 or 12 years old. I can't tell you exactly. And we had a preacher that just had one arm. He always made me feel bad, you know, because he had his arm off up here. But I can remember when he asked him to come to the altar, and I went. And my sister went, but she went shouting, and I went and prayed. Because she was ready she had talked to her mother, and she was ready to accept the Lord right then. And he wanted to know if I believed that Jesus saved me from sin, he took my sins away, and I said yes. Well, I've often thought, you know, that I didn't realize altogether just what I said, but I never did go back on the Lord. I've always accepted him. And now when Jesus came, that made it that much better.
Now tell us when and where you were sanctified, would you?
Well, I was at the altar at the Olivet church that was built. Well, I might have been, no, I was at the altar in the tabernacle, where we had a big tabernacle. It was a nice one. Brother Wilson was a wonderful man. And he was a man that had worked with wood and things like that, you know, that he knew what he was putting there. And they used that to build the church after the school left. So it's still working. And I went to the altar, and I just couldn't understand first. But I accepted the Lord as my sanctifier. And Val Wilson and I, during this time that we were there, before she went as a missionary, we went with her brother to God's Bible School in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I went to the altar just to pray. And there was a man there that he said, "Oh Lord, take all the devil's pride out of this girl." And I thought, could that be me? I didn't know I had any devil's pride. But I said, if I have, Lord, take it away. And I think that's when the Lord spoke to my soul.
And you found the grace of God to be sufficient for all of your needs across the years?
I always turn it over to him. Let him have his way with me. Try to. He said, do it all. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And that's what I thought. That's what my words were.
Thank you, Miss Mary Nesbitt, for telling us about yourself and about the beginning of Old Olivet, or the Illinois Holiness University. We appreciate this interview.
Being size. Then I had a little girl. I was in the hospital, and I met our teacher that was helping me at that time in Danville. And she said, well, what you going to do? I told her I had to go to the hospital. And she said, oh, let me have your place. I said, well, Jessie, I wanted you to take my place. And I thought that, or Brother Warner's daughter, she was there in school. She was a grown woman. And I said, I thought she might take my place, or you can take it if you want it. Oh, she says, I want your place. So I let her have it. Told her, all right. And she had a little girl come to school to her. And she said every day that little girl would cry, and she didn't know why. She says, I don't understand it. She says, she's kind to her. But the first day that I went in that schoolroom, and the little girl went back to her seat, sit down, cried, and I went to her, and I said, well, what's the matter? I said, don't you want me to help you with your lesson? And she looked at me so funny, and pretty soon she smiled. And you know that girl never cried another time? Now, why? I don't know, but then she must have known that Jessie wasn't her teacher and I was. I don't know what else it was. But she was so cute about it. She was a missionary's daughter. Very nice mother.
We certainly appreciate your telling